Keegan, a lot has happened this week in free agency.
A lot
has happened. It's been kind of underwhelming. I think the word I was thinking of is mid. Pretty mid. It's been a pretty mid.
It's been whatever.
Mid free agency class. We haven't seen bombshell trades like Davante Adams going to the Raiders or Tyreek Hill going to the Dolphins. Nothing crazy. Major dominoes haven't fallen quite yet. We're still waiting on Rodgers to the Jets. DeAndre Hopkins is going to get traded. When's that happening? Where is he going? Austin Eckler
posted something on his TikTok last night.
He did.
DeAndre Hopkins did.
So, rumor is that he wants to go to the Cowboys, but the Cowboys don't want to trade for him. Interesting enough, Austin Eckler has permission to seek a trade. Austin fucking Eckler, all right? One of the kings of fantasy football might be changing roles and changing teams next year. So that seems like a major domino. So it feels like all like the major stuff hasn't really happened. And we're really just at a gourmet restaurant, just eating bread. And maybe we got some Brussels sprouts. Maybe we're munching on a mozzarella stick. Because gourmet restaurants are mozzarella stick. We are at Applebee's eating good in the neighborhood here, eating mozzarella sticks. But there have been some pretty big moves that I think have some major implications for fantasy football. And Keegan and I are going to rank the top 12 moves for fantasy football and kind of just break down each angle. So, Keegan, you ranted about the Jets, but there are some other quarterback changes that have happened over the past couple weeks. And I think the one that's going to be almost just as significant for a second-year wide receiver primed to break out is Derek Carr signing with the Saints. I know this happened a couple weeks ago, but this move has created several dominoes that I think really changed the landscape of fantasy football in 2023. So Derek Carr leaves the Raiders. Derek Carr signs a 4-year contract for like $160 million with the Saints. The salary cap is fake. Go look at the Saints salary cap. It is a myth. We now have one of the best deep ball throwers in the league, Derek Carr, who threw 9 touchdowns over 20 yards to Davante Adams, to a wide receiver in Chris Olave, who was air yards king last season, who basically had all his team's air yards, but because he had Jameis Winston and Andy Dalton throwing him the rock, barely caught any of it. And if you look at all of Chris Olave's numbers, they show somebody who is elite, somebody who is primed to be an alpha in the NFL. And I'm not trying to say Derek Carr is some elite quarterback, but he has proved time and time again that he is good enough to support a wide receiver one in fantasy. So I think his move to the Saints makes that offense much better. I think it boosts Chris Olave into a potential top 12 season. I feel really good about Rashid Shaheed, kind of a sleeper, but he's a deep ball guy that could benefit from Derek Carr. And Derek Carr's had no issues checking down to running backs over the years. So if and when Alvin Kamara plays next season after suspension and isn't in the doghouse, I think this sets up well for Alvin Kamara. And then there's Michael Thomas just floating out there. You know, he just came back on a 1-year deal. So I think this is a really interesting move. And though Derek Carr is somebody we like to just make fun of incessantly, I think it has major implications, and I really am all in on Chris Olave in 2023. What do you think about this move? Is it kind of just... Are you the Squidward? How about this? I'm going to judge each move, Keegan, by the Squidward sleep meme, if you're familiar with it, where his eyes are closed or his eyes are open. Are your eyes open here on this move?
Eyes are open for sure. Okay. The same way Garrett Wilson gets a bump, Chris Olave gets a massive bump as well, too. And hate him or love him, Derek Carr is a pretty good quarterback, honestly. When you look at the NFL landscape, Derek Carr was somebody I was pretty okay with the Jets signing. And his boost for Olave is great. They also go ahead and, I know we'll probably talk about this, but Jamaal Williams is now a Saint as well, too. They've got themselves a little decent offense. And then, what will happen with Mike Thomas? But my eyes are open on this. Derek Carr is a huge positive for this after last year's season of like kind of switching back and forth between Andy Dalton and Jameis Winston. So they'll get some consistent play. They'll get a competitor at QB, somebody who can put the ball down the field, and he's really going to boost the production of this offense as a whole, which should lead to more points in general for the Saints. So, and Shaheed's a nice call out. That could be a pretty interesting sleeper. He's got some burners.
He reminds me of Deshaun Jackson. I know that's kind of crazy to say, but kind of just does. I guess I'm curious in terms of Chris Olave. You're on the clock. You're choosing between, say, Chris Olave and, I don't know, I'm pulling up the underdog ADP right now. Would you take Chris Olave over DK Metcalf right now?
Ooh, yeah. Yeah, why not?
Would you take Chris Olave over Devontae Smith?
No.
Okay.
That's probably where I'd break. It's probably like somebody like Davante, Olave, and Metcalf. And it's nothing against Metcalf. Like, I've been a Metcalf dynasty owner since our league started. I love Metcalf's game, but second year, sophomore wide receiver, the bump that always comes, and he's highly productive as a rookie, and his quarterback situation got better. I'm taking that.
What about Jalen Waddle?
Whew. Waddle stock to me is hurt because of Tua's uncertainty.
Okay. But Mike White, that was a quiet little signing. Mike White raises the floor at least if Tua does miss time. It's like, oh, well, we know
I think
Mike
it's,
White
yeah.
feed wide receivers.
I'd probably say like Davante, then Devonta Smith, Olave, and then like Metcalf, Waddle are about the same for me right now.
That's a tier, right? So remember we talked about in our wide receiver episode, would you rather have elite wide receiver twos and great offenses, or in a really good up and coming wide receiver one in a so-so offense, right? It's that give and take. So I think Olave is going to be someone we have to talk about. It's one thing to be like, I'm super excited about Olave, but it's another thing when push comes to shove to take him over Jalen Waddle. So I think that'll be really interesting to monitor throughout the season. I think this is a big move. And I think this is, I don't know if this is number one. I'd say this is actually number two. The number one move for me with the most impact for fantasy implications is this Jimmy G signing in Las Vegas. And the reason why I say it's the number one most impactful free agency signing for fantasy football is the fact that the Raiders last year had a wide receiver one and a running back one in their offense. They had guys who finished in the top three at their positions in one offense, Keegan. Can you guess if any other team that had top 12 guys at wide receiver and running back switched quarterbacks? Any other team? No, none. And did any other team make such a drastic shift from Derek Carr, who loves to throw the ball deep, versus Jimmy G, who is just a middle of the field merchant, just going to feed people underneath bubble screens? It's really weird. And again, last year, Davante Adams feasted on targets 20 yards or more downfield. He had 9 touchdowns on throws 20 yards or more downfield. Jimmy G had 1 such touchdown. I think he might have had like 1 attempt over 20 plus yards downfield. I'm looking at this graph from Warren Sharp, and it has Jimmy G all the way to the bottom in the left, and Derek Carr is all the way up to the right in terms of performance on passes thrown 20 plus yards over the last 3 years. So you have a wide receiver, Davante Adams, who did really well downfield. You now have Jimmy Garoppolo, who will be able to feed Davante Adams over the middle if Davante's in the slot, which Davante plays. But this is a pretty drastic change in play style. The offense will look different. And how does that impact Davante Adams? And how does that impact Josh Jacobs? I feel like those are the questions. Do you think Davante takes a major step back, or is he just so good they'll figure out a way?
I want to say it's almost like a non-factor. Okay. It probably won't be. I think Davante, because Davante had a really good season last year for his first year playing with the Raiders. Like, it was actually above the expectation that I think I even had. So I would say it might regress to the mean a little bit with this season with Jimmy G, and it'll go down. But I don't think it'll be that much. The deep ball ability of Jimmy G will definitely hurt some of the fantasy output, but Davante will still have a pretty good season, I think, as their wide receiver one. No more Waller. Opens up some targets for new Jakobi Meyers addition there, and then also Hunter Renfrow. But I think the running game will stay the same, and if not, even be a little bit better. Second year in like Josh McDaniels' offense with Josh Jacobs, and they'll probably lean on the run a bit more, even so more so than they did last year, to like get Jimmy G going in the season. So I think Josh Jacobs has another strong opportunity to finish as an RB1. And I'm sure Davante will end up as a wide receiver 1 again, but maybe not at the same output as last year.
Like a top 3 finish seems a bit unlikely.
Yeah. Top 10, top 12, probably not. But top 3, I'm not buying that.
Okay. So that is a pretty drastic decrease. And again, 9 touchdowns over 20 yards. You nailed it. Very hard to replicate that year over year. You will regress back to your averages. Like he kind of is a prime regression candidate. But if he's in the slot, they're feeding him. I think he'll be fine. But you mentioned Jakobi Meyers. Interesting signing.
I'm pissed.
Yeah, we thought he might have a little juice as like a wide receiver 1 on the Panthers or something. And now he's the wide receiver 2 on a team with Davante Adams, on a team that's probably going to run the ball, on a team with Jimmy G. Jimmy G got to support 2 like really fantasy relevant wide receivers. It doesn't appear that way.
Least ideal landing spot for Jakobi Meyers. If I could have picked one myself, it definitely wouldn't have been the Raiders. You know Jimmy G better than I. You've watched a lot of Jimmy G over the years. But from my opinion, I don't know how he's going to support Jakobi Meyers, at least the way we, the fantasy community, thought he might get supported with a new environment. I thought he would get the Christian Kirk bump, and he's probably
the same.
Going to be more akin to like an Adam Thielen.
He wishes. Jakobi Meyers would have to catch a lot of touchdowns to be really good next year. Or Davante Adams would have to get hurt. He'd have to slide into that alpha role.
Yeah, so, but I think the Raiders, fantasy-wise, will be very similar. Like Davante, a couple less touchdowns.
He had 14 last year.
Yeah.
What do you maybe like 9? Well, he scores
9.
Really
that's the number I had in my head. He is really fucking good.
He's just really fucking good. But like, I think I'd rather have Garrett Wilson next year than Davante Adams. I know that sounds crazy, but I'm just trying to skate to where the puck is going. I know you're a hockey guy.
Wow, I like that.
I'm trying to go to where the puck is going, not where the puck has been. Davante is really good, and I don't want to. He may have a discount because I'm not the smartest guy in the world. I'm sure a lot smarter people are like, Jimmy G, I'm good. But it's crazy is if you look at underdog ADP, for people that don't play best ball to listen, underdog is basically year-round fantasy football where you draft teams. You don't have to set any lineups. It's real degen stuff, but it's pretty fun. Jimmy G's underdog ADP is up like 30 spots. So that market likes Jimmy G. So that's interesting. And Jakobi Meyers is good. Davante Adams is good. Hunter Renfrow is fine. Josh Jacobs is awesome. So maybe Jimmy G is just going to go from one elite offense to just a really good offense and just benefit from that.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's really interesting. But you mentioned the Waller trade. Would you say that's probably your third biggest trade or third biggest move of free agency? Like, where would you rank that?
It's up there. I have a third that I think all of the fantasy community can probably agree with. That's above that. But Darren Waller going to the Giants is a risk, nonetheless. I mean, you take the Kadarius Toney pick that you got from trading away an injury-prone freak athlete who is very good at football to pick up a other freak athlete who spent the last year injured.
2 years.
He's been tied in 2 years.
2 years. He's played 20 games over the past 2 seasons.
But if you are the Giants and like you already kind of like the systems in place, you think like you did really like they basically played with ends meet last year and performed above expectations. Like swing for the fences on something like this. I really like the signing of Darren Waller. I think I love that. Like, why not take a shot? You got Daniel Jones locked up. You've got Saquon Barkley locked up. Like, you bring Slayton back. Like, go take a swing on somebody for offense and get a skill position. Now, what Waller will do, I don't know. But if he stays healthy and he performs, he's a top 5 tight end candidate and might help even out that skill group a little bit in fantasy if he can just stay on the field. But I'm excited. I think that's a really good move.
It's not like Darren Waller's been dust when he's been out on the field either. Like, he was still pretty damn good last year. Weird year. They brought in Davante. His role changed. But 2-3 years ago, Darren Waller was the alpha. He was the lead wide receiver in that offense. And he had a season where he went for over 111 yards, 100 catches, and 11 touchdowns. Now, I'm not saying he's going to do that again, but I think that's in his range of outcomes because he steps into an offense that clearly has a good offensive coordinator, has an ascending Daniel Jones. People can make fun of that contract all they want. The Giants had no choice. Like, what were you going to do there? I think Daniel Jones is going to get better with his second year in Daboll's offense, give him some legitimate weapons. And you're in a situation where Derek Carr is back on the Raiders 4 or 5 years ago, where he's the clear-cut guy. And if he can stay healthy, Keegan, he really boosts the tight end position, one that we've been making fun of for a while now.
Yeah.
He really
he can level
punch.
it out.
Yeah, he gives it a little punch. And I'm excited. I think Darren Waller is not dust. He needs to stay healthy. But if you look at his numbers over the past 2 years, he averages over 10 yards a catch. He's still really good. I think this is a great move for the Giants. I think it's a good move for Daniel Jones.
I agree.
So what's your move that you wanted to talk about for the fantasy community? I think I have an idea what you want to talk about.
It's got to be Rashaad Penny to the Philadelphia Eagles, is it not?
Oh, I thought you were going to go in a different direction, but you know how much I love Rashaad Penny. Oh, my goodness.
I mean, it's not just us, too. It's like he's the fantasy darling, for several years. He's one of the most efficient runners when he's healthy. He's so explosive. His damage he can do while running the ball is crazy. You just can't stay on the field. And so now he goes and assumes what I would believe the number one RB spot on the Eagles. Like he'll go in there as Miles Sanders' role. He'll still play with Boston Scott, obviously, and Kenny G, but Rashaad Penny on the Eagles is so exciting. I mean, that is going to be the best 6 games of running back football you're going to see all year.
And Rashaad Penny, I think, if you follow us on TikTok, Rashaad Penny's been available for exactly half of the games in his 5-year career. Staying healthy for him is a big if. He's 5'11", 220 pounds, and he is legit one of the fastest players on the field. He is a freight train. In 2021, when he was able to play for 10 games, he averaged over 6.3 yards per carry. The guy is just a monster. If you take, Miles Sanders' carries from last year, right? Miles Sanders, I think, had over 220. He rushed for 1,300 yards and 11 touchdowns. If you take the amount of carries that Miles Sanders had, and you multiply it by Rashaad Penny's career rushing averages, that gets Rashaad Penny to 1,500 yards and 13 touchdowns, which would just be magnificent because that's basically a Nick Chubb season out of Rashaad Penny, and he could be going in the 6th or 7th round. But staying healthy is a big if. This guy's already torn his ACL in his career. He just broke his leg last season. Now he broke it in October. He should be fully recovered. He's, saying playing 17 games is really important to him. He's saying he's refreshed. He's on a prove-it deal, $1.5 million. And who knows, maybe the Eagles bring somebody in the draft. I don't think they will, considering how they value that position and how they don't want to use premium picks on it. But man, Rashaad Penny, I shit you not, Keegan, range of outcomes, he could rush for 2,000 yards. I know that sounds absurd. He could do it. He
it's
really
up there.
could. He really could.
That's what's so fun about Rashaad Penny. It's could rush for 2,000 yards, could play 4 games.
Where would you take Rashaad Penny in fantasy drafts if you knew he would play all 17 games?
Oh my God. If he's not going to make it out of the 3rd round, he might not make it out of, I'm not a running back person, but I would take a flyer. If I knew he was going to play all 17 games, if I could see the future, not know his stats, but knew he could play 17 games fully healthy, I'm putting him up there in the first 30 picks of the draft.
Rashaad Penny plays 13 games for you. Where do you draft him?
He's still the same.
Wow.
Dude, those 13 games could be so electric. And this is obviously all speculation, right? And we have no idea what it's going to look like. But you go to the most efficient rushing offense in the prior year, a team that is built to run the ball and run it down teams' throats. And you have this extremely electric, efficient, strong running back that's going to get a chance to be a basically a workhorse RB1. I just love the upside. Why not, right?
Yeah. I love
fantasy. It's all about upside.
last season, only in 3 games, 6% of Rashaad Penny's rushes went for 10 plus yards, which is absurd. He also averaged over 4.32 yards after contact per attempt. So this guy is not coming down with an arm tackle, Keegan. It's not happening. And did we mention that the Eagles have a good offensive line and an incredible run scheme where the defense is always worried that Jalen Hurts is going to keep the rock on a read option? No, we didn't.
Yep.
Wow. It is a great opportunity for Rashaad Penny.
And they bring Jason Kelce back too. He decides to come back for one more. Yep. So the true quarterback of their offense, like the guy who guides everything, is coming back for another year.
Wow.
So
dissing Hurts. Wow.
No, not dissing Hurts. You know what I mean? Like,
yes,
that offense moves through Kelce.
Huge leader, very important player on that team. On the flip side, I'd say probably the fifth most important, or fifth. Yeah, maybe. I'd say fifth most important move is the guy Rashaad Penny's replacing. Tell me what you think about Miles Sanders heading to Carolina.
Man, honestly, I really, really like it. I mean, good for Miles Sanders, good for the Panthers. Like, I think Miles Sanders is a really good running back. He reunites with his running back coach, Deuce Staley, when he goes to Carolina.
From his rookie
year.
Yeah.
He had 2 years with Deuce, 2019 and 2020. Gosh, I'm trying to pull up those season because there were some stats I want to pull up. But yeah, I'm really, really excited about it. I think Miles Sanders is still a good running back, and he's hated on, I guess, by the fantasy community, especially after a dud year. And then he's like, don't draft me, and then has a really good 11 touchdown, 1,200 yard season this year. But I like the signing a lot. I think Carolina, what they were able to do running the ball last year with Deontay Foreman and Chuba Hubbard was super impressive. And Deontay Foreman was somebody who won you multiple weeks of fantasy football, was kind of like a waiver wire hero, very impactful. And so now they get a guy like Miles Sanders, who's a proven running back in the league. And I think it's going to bode well for not only their offense, but I think he's going to have a really good fantasy year. I know you have some different thoughts on the Carolina situation and what happens there, but I think this is net positive for not only the Panthers, but Miles Sanders' fantasy output.
Yeah, I like Miles Sanders. I think I really liked him his rookie season, Keegan. He had a bit of a different role as a rookie when he played on the Eagles under Deuce Staley. Also used heavily as a wide receiver. His rookie season, he had 67 targets, 53 receptions, 517 receiving yards, and he had a 1.53 yards per route run as a running back, which is super impressive. Each season after his rookie year, you've seen those targets dwindle. 50 targets in 2020, 35 targets in 2021, 28 targets in 2022. Now that makes sense. Jalen Hurts is a rushing quarterback. He's not going to dump the ball off to his running back. He's going to go out there and get those yards himself, rushing the ball, in terms of like creating out of structure. Miles Sanders was hyper efficient in an offense with the best offensive line in the league, in an offense that was always winning, and one of the best run schemes in the league. He had a career year in his free agency year, and now he's going to a team, Carolina Panthers, that could be one of the worst teams in football. They're going to play a rookie quarterback. They have a decent offensive line. Their receivers right now are dog shit, so to eloquently put it. He's going to need to catch the ball to be good in fantasy next year. So does he see a bunch of targets if Bryce Young's his quarterback? I think so. Bryce is going to dump it down to his running back. CJ Stroud could do it too. But if we see him catch like 50 to 60 balls, I'm all in on Miles Sanders. If he has a similar role to what he's had with the Eagles, where he's rotated in a committee and he doesn't catch the ball on one of the worst teams in the league, I think he'll be fine. But I think a lot of people are going to be drafting him in the top like 4 or 5 rounds next year. And it's hard for him to cash at his ceiling if he does that. So that's kind of where I'm at on Sanders.
I feel like if that's where he's getting drafted, I understand the concern. But I mean, Sanders was hardly going like that high last year. You know, I mean, Sanders is like 6th round guy for some people and fell. And I know it's because of this prior season he had before, which was really bad. But I don't know if the fantasy community is going to value a move like this after a good season with the Eagles. Like, I see him as a discount opportunity for a running back. Like, if the way the offseason is going to shake out and everything, like, you'll get a rookie quarterback in Carolina. people might not trust it as like something they want to lean on for the running back spot. I understand the hesitation. Like I wouldn't draft him in the 4th round. There's better players out there for me, but if he falls to like the 7th and I've done my 0 RB strategy or 6th round,
I'm in if that's
I'm in.
If he's going later in drafts, I'm in. If he's priced as like a high end RB2, which I feel like he will be, I'm out.
Sure. Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting for sure. Another really interesting move that has a ton of implications for running backs in fantasy is David Montgomery signing a 3-year, $18 million deal with the Detroit Lions.
Yep.
A lot of fallout. That leads to another big move, which is Donta Foreman signing with the Bears for $3 million. And that's led to some of the most annoying Twitter moments in Twitter's history, which is the sell Khalil Herbert, buy Khalil Herbert, sell DeAndre Swift, buy DeAndre Swift narrative. These backfields just seem like committee backfields with good runners. And as long as you're not spending too high a draft capital on David Montgomery or DeAndre Swift or Khalil Herbert or Donta Foreman, they're probably pretty good bets in a 0 RB strategy to find at least an RB2 that you can start weekly. So we can start with Monty. How do you think this impacts Swift? Or is it just the same role that Jamaal Williams is playing?
It's the same role. They just see Monty as a better version of Jamaal, I think.
Probably.
And
right? I think
like,
it is.
That's the mentality. Like, see him as the Jamaal role, but better. Like somebody who might be a little bit more effective on like some runs. But Jamaal had like a fantastic season, of course. Like love Jamaal here, but I just think they like him more. Yeah, team sacks for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know how this looks for Swift because Swift is, I don't think the Lions like him very much. Like I don't think they see him
early candidate
the way that fantasy
coach hate me. Early
yes, exactly.
Why my coach hates me works.
And this is obviously like fantasy community versus actual NFL community. Like there is something that the staff and the NFL does not see or that sees in Swift that we don't. Obviously, like we see Swift as a fantasy highlight player, somebody who we want on our teams and we could draft, but it just doesn't seem that way with the Lions and how they want to run their offense. So I wouldn't be surprised if Swift had the same like high ceiling but volatile output as he did last year, where it's like 1 or 2 games he'll splash, but it'll be a roller coaster again. I think the Lions are bolstering themselves up well for a run game that can have an effective pass catcher in Swift, somebody who can get you some explosive plays and then even it out with Montgomery. I think it's kind of like a little bit of a fantasy hell situation. You're not drafting either of these guys to be like your stud RB1. This is, like you said, you maybe a 0 RB, you want to pick one of them up for like RB2, something like that, but it's tough.
One of those two guys is going to be really fucking good in fantasy.
But now it's like, who, which one?
Yeah. Because one of those guys is going to be behind one of the best offensive lines in football with a hyper-efficient offense that's now going to get Jameson Williams in the fold. I think the Lions are going to have one of the best offenses in football. And you want the running back in the best offense. So
yep, now you just got to pick the right one.
Who's it going to be, right? And it's the same thing now when you look at the fallout from the Montgomery signing, the fallout too from Donta Foreman from the Panthers to the Bears. And I've been team Khalil Herbert. I think Khalil Herbert is really fucking good. If you look at his advanced stats, he led the league last year in rushing yards over expectation. He was 3rd in the league in yards after contact per attempt. This guy has the juice, Keegan.
Yep.
But
yeah, I'm all aboard team Herbert.
Herbert is really good, but is he a bell cow? No, probably not. You probably want to bring in other people. You probably want to run a running back by committee. They bring in Donta Foreman, who last season, I wouldn't say full-blown league winner, but was really good on that Panthers team. When he became the starter, he averaged like 12 fantasy points per game after the CMC trade. Very boomer bust. He was either like a top 5 finish or like top 50 finish, which was tough. So he had to pick the right Donta Foreman week. But he's recovered from his Achilles injuries really well. And he looked awesome. The way I envision Donta Foreman coming to this offense is that Khalil Herbert is now going to be in that Montgomery role, and Donta Foreman is going to spell Herbert, and we might see like a 60-40 split with some Travis Homer worked in. But some people on fantasy Twitter are steadfast in saying Herbert sucks and they're going to draft Bijan Robinson. They're going to draft the running back at 9. Are you paying attention? They've signed like no offensive lineman outside of a new center. They're taking a tackle at 9. They're not taking a running back. Like, what are we doing here? They might take a day 3 running back to add to that room, but that room kind of seems set. So I'm curious. You said your team Herbert. You really like Donta Foreman too. I feel like this is similar in that Lions backfield. One of these guys is going to be really good for fantasy. Which one are you going to be prioritizing?
Khalil Herbert. He should finish the season as a higher running back, like total scoring. I bet he has better averages. Foreman will be a nice, like, you want to talk about handcuff situation? Like, that's a good handcuff if you want to look that far down the line, like drafting. Because Foreman is not somebody who's going to be like heavy draft capital for you to add to your team. Like, that's a great person to like. If you want to go the Khalil Herbert way, like get yourself a Foreman handcuff. But I think Khalil Herbert has a really interesting opportunity to emerge as, you know, a stud fantasy running back for sure. And a really good running back in the NFL. He's super effective when he's on the field. He splashes. I kind of hope they treat this the exact opposite of how the Cowboys treated last year. Not to compare the two running backs, but like Zeke and Pollard should have been opposite in usage in my mind, right? Like where you have the explosive Pollard and Zeke come in and do the thumper, but they just trusted Zeke too long throughout the season. And I don't see Foreman getting that role. Like they are doing this because they believe in Herbert. Like you said, they're not going to draft a running back.
I don't
sign
think so.
like a cheap veteran to bolster up your room. And it kind of tells me exactly what I need to know about Herbert and where he stands with this offense. And that means it's Herbert's backfield. And everybody else is to fill up the room.
I think so too. I think Foreman's a really good addition. It's a good 1-2 punch. You brought up Ezekiel Elliott. Zeke gets cut. This is big. You and I are big Tony P. truthers. I've been a Tony P. truther for years, and I was a little confused at the reaction by the fantasy community when Zeke got cut, saying RB1 season for Tony Pollard. You and I begged Jerry Jones to play Pollard more, and it took Ezekiel Elliott getting hurt and turning into dust for Tony Pollard to get on the field. I highly doubt that they are going to go into next season with just Tony Pollard as the running back 1, post breaking his leg. This team seems primed to take a running back.
Bijan.
Do you think it's Bijan for the Cowboys?
Dude, they are sitting in that spot. They're like right at the tail end of the 20s in the draft, and I just feel like that pick screams Bijan.
Yeah.
And then Tony Pollard truthers will crawl in a hole and die because of that.
Or Charbonnet. These are Charbonnet too. Like they could take a running back in round 2 and pair him with Tony Pollard.
But this is what you need to do in the fantasy community though. Is like you have to see where like the team's decisions, like with signings, free agencies, or drafting, especially a position like running back, can give you the indication of what you need to know for how a player's role will be established next year. Khalil Herbert looks good to me. Signing Donta Foreman and Travis Homer is not like, whoa, that room's too crowded. It's we have our running back. Let's get some guys in to add into the rotation and move forward with that. Tony Pollard is a situation where it's like you're really excited. Zeke gets cut. And you look at where the Cowboys are drafting and they're not making any free agency signings, and you're like, fuck. You get a little disappointed because the first thing you think of is like, well, they're in a prime spot to take a Bijan. They could take a Charbonnet, and then Tony Pollard's role just becomes dust.
I'm sure Tony Pollard will be like really big part of that offense, but
it won't be what we think is going to happen with the Zeke cutting.
Tony Pollard. It's not, and he's a broken leg playing on the franchise tag. It's not.
Yeah,
they're looking for his replacement. I guarantee you that they're looking for his replacement. Okay, some quick hitter quarterback moves, Keegan. Baker Mayfield goes to the Bucs. Jacoby Brisset
my mic shares are in the trash, dude. My mic Kevin shares are God, they're down.
Baker Mayfield is a fantasy football terrorist. Look at what he did to OBJ. Look at what he did to OBJ when OBJ went to the Browns. Look at what he did to DJ Moore. DJ Moore was ridiculously good the minute Sam Darnold was his quarterback again. And this is Sam fucking Darnold, okay? This isn't this
future QB1 of the 49ers.
Yeah, okay, bud. Baker Mayfield might be able to feed Chris Godwin, the rock in the slot. But Godwin and Evans are two of the major players, major characters in all of fantasy football. These guys were both top 24 wide receivers last season. I do not see a world in which Mike Evans enjoys playing with Baker Mayfield.
No, absolutely not.
No. Baker Mayfield is a fantasy football terrorist. He downgrades that entire offense outside of maybe Rashaad White dumping off the White, but
speaking of White, while we're talking about the Bucs, they just released Leonard Fournette this morning while we were recording.
Lombardi, Lenny, so he could be an addition for the Cowboys. The Cowboys.
I was just about to say, I kind of forgot about that release. I saw it on Twitter before, right when we hopped on. But yeah, anyways.
So Baker Mayfield is going to destroy the value of Mike Evans. Chris Godwin still TBD. We have Jacoby Brisset going to the Commanders.
Is he going to save Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson? I kind of like this.
I don't know if we'll say save because they were good last year, but I think that they are totally fine for fantasy. Think about how good Donovan Peoples-Jones was. Think about how great Amari Cooper was
so good last year
with Jacoby Brisset.
Yeah.
I think the Browns have really good infrastructure in terms of offensive line and play calling with Stefanski, but new offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy's coming into town. I think this is a good signing. This is so much better than Sam Howell. And Sam Howell might be fine, but Jacoby Brisset gives this offense a dependable fantasy floor that fantasy managers going into next year can at least just bank on. Like, we've seen Jacoby be good. We've seen Jacoby support some key fantasy players, and I think he's going to be able to do that with Dotson and Terry. And I think this might be the best quarterback Terry McLaurin's played with, which is something else. Something else, man. The Falcons have made some moves, Keegan. They traded for Jonnu Smith, and they brought in Taylor Heineke. So this is a podcast talking about fantasy football, and we have not spoken about Kyle Pitts and Drake London, mostly Kyle Pitts. Do you think the Jonnu Smith move is good for Kyle Pitts?
Yes, because we can finally stop seeing Kyle Pitts in blocking sets and blocking stances. Like, just let Jonnu Smith do all of that, please. God, I hope that's what it's for. And I don't want to speculate, but I would assume that's why you signed Jonnu Smith.
I think the Falcons are going to win that division. A lot of people think the Saints are going to win that division. I think Arthur Smith is going to put together a really good offense. I don't know if it's going to be Desmond Ridder or Taylor Heineke. Desmond Ridder's splits with Drake London were very encouraging post Marcus Mariota, who signed with the Eagles. Please, Marcus, we're begging you, leave the NFL. But all accounts, Marcus Mariota is a super nice guy, but seriously, what the fuck was last year? Okay, so this is an upgrade for Kyle Pitts. Either way, we shake it. Taylor Heineke.
It's a good situation.
Taylor Heineke was able to hit some deep shots, and Pitts is going to be deep downfield, and his 45% catch rate from last season hopefully shows up. 45% catch.
Man,
that's like bad, cartoon numbers. It's like Baker Mayfield was throwing him the rock. Okay, so that's nice. I think that gives that offense a safe fantasy floor with Heineke. He's been able to feed guys. He's been able to support good wide receiver seasons. Those are kind of the major quarterback changes. A couple changes here that I thought were important. What do you think about Juju leaving the Chiefs for the Patriots?
Weird. I mean, why would the Patriots choose Juju over Jacoby Meyers? First off, they paid them the same amount of money. My Squidward meme radar, my eyes are closed on this. I don't know. The Patriots are going to be a fantasy wasteland this year.
Oh, yeah.
Juju is going to be no higher than a wide receiver 4 or 3. I just don't. That doesn't move me. This Patriots offense does not move me at all. Mondre, wheels up for Mondre, though.
Yeah. I think Ramondre Stevenson, they brought in James Robinson. It looks like Damian Harris is not going to be on that team next year. That'll be really interesting. I think Pierre Strong will have a role on the team. He looked pretty good when he played in limited snaps last season. I think this move, it wakes me up in the middle of the night with my eyes bloodshot, gripping the bed, wide awake, off of a bender, because Juju's leaving the Chiefs.
Oh, yeah, okay. I see where you're going with this.
Which means there's a
Kadarius Toney, wide receiver 1 season.
Never give up. One of us.
I knew we would find our way back to Toney.
Yeah, we had to end the episode with Kyle Pitts and Kadarius Toney. But this is huge for Sky Moore too. I think that the Chiefs are going to have to draft somebody or maybe bring someone in. Like Juju was really solid player for them. Like just big body slot, could get some yards after the reception. I mean, yards after catch, almost 1,000 yards playing with that team he missed a bunch of games. But this is huge for Toney. If Toney can stay healthy, man, which is one of the biggest ifs in life, if life wasn't cruel, if Kadarius Toney can stay healthy, my goodness. I think something that's really interesting too, the Dolphins brought back Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert on pretty cheap deals.
Yeah, I don't know how that moves me. I feel like they're going to have the same role as they did last year.
This screams we're going to draft a running back.
They re-signed Myles Gaskin too, so they've got 3 running backs on the roster at all really cheap deals.
What do we know about the Dolphins? Speed, right?
Yeah. Oh my God, dude. They're going to end up with somebody like Jahmyr Gibbs or Devon A-Chain, aren't they?
Think about it. Think about A-Chain or Jahmyr Gibbs with Mostert and Wilson, right? Mostert is a good player. Wilson's a thumper. They need a receiver speed guy in that backfield. And these guys, these vets are on such cheap deals. Like they are screaming, we draft a unreal fast running back in like the second.
I'll riot if they draft A-Chain.
Or Jahmyr Gibbs. I think
Gibbs is fine. I just don't want to root for. I don't want A-Chain to go to the Dolphins, so because then I'm going to have to root for him.
We didn't talk about Jamaal Williams. He signs with the Saints. That's a pretty solid deal for Jamaal and for the Saints. Jamal's not going to rush
good buffer,
rushing touchdowns. Good buffer.
Good buffer if Kamara gets suspended. Great red zone threat. I feel like Jamal's going to be a very popular fantasy, like late round RB again next year. Maybe not the same statistical output, but I wouldn't be surprised if he has 10 touchdowns again next year.
Samaje Perine, who was good as a receiver.
Very, very interesting signing, I think, honestly. Like, that tells me that, because I know the Bengals want to keep him too, but I'm worried about Javonte Williams being ready for week 1. And if he's not ready week 1, or is, I guess, like, he'll be very limited and not like at full speed yet. It's just such a long recovery he's got to go through. So I do get worried about Javonte, but I think it's a good spot for Samaje Perine, and he'll probably have seeing him in that role, his expanded role when Mixon was out or missing time is really encouraging. So I kind of like that signing by the Broncos.
Dump offs to Perine. I think the Broncos are going to draft a running back. I think Sean Payton wants to establish it. If you see all these signings he made, just like offensive linemen, we're going to trade our running backs. We're going to take the ball
out of Russell Wilson's hands. Yeah, there it is.
Establish it, baby. We brought in Mike McGlinchey, who couldn't pass protect if his life depended on it, but is a damn good run blocker. We brought in Ben Powers, Kenny Powers, his younger brother, to be a guard. I cannot believe there's a guy named Ben fucking Powers playing in the NFL.
It's awesome.
They beefed up that O-line. They brought in Samaje Perine. They want to trade Jerry Jeudy. They want to establish the fuck out of the run. I think they draft the running back if I had to pick one, because I don't think Jamonte's ACL injury was like 4 different ligaments in his knee. So, but that wraps up a pretty mid free agency period, right? I can't believe people did everyday reaction pods to every signing. Good for them. I think our approach is pretty solid. Just wait for the end of the week and just talk about it all at once. I think that makes for a good time. Keegan, thank you for joining, man. Happy Friday. I hope you have a great weekend. Listeners, or if you are still listening, you know what you need to do. Please go touch some grass. Go hug a loved one. Pause this episode at any point. Hang out with your family. Hang out with your friends. Come back to us. We'll be here. If you haven't yet, please subscribe. Subscribe on YouTube. Comment. Subscribe on YouTube.
Ring that fucking bell. Turn those alerts on.
The bell. Ring it, okay? If you haven't followed us on Twitter, please do it. If you haven't followed us on TikTok, go ahead. Instagram, we're growing. We have YouTube Shorts now. We are everywhere as we gear up for what should be pretty fun 2023 of fantasy football. Thank you, everybody, for following along. We appreciate you. If you want to, share our episode with a friend. Share our episode with a family member. We're a good kept secret here, but we're also here to make sure everybody can win their leagues. And we're also here to make sure people can have some fun covering football. So thank you, Keegan, for joining. And until next time.
Let's go Jets. Aaron Rodgers, baby.
Jets.
Jets.